Right there. Okay, we're up and running. So good evening, everyone. Let me do a quick mute all. There we go. Okay. So I I just had I was just over at someone's home. Um, a gentleman. I don't think anyone knows who I'm talking about. That's on right now, but there's a gentleman in the community, actually slightly younger than myself, and he's being challenged by a very serious illness, and this illness that he's being challenged by, um, which we call in Yiddish yena machla, that illness. We don't like giving power to the illness by saying its name. I'm assuming you all know what I'm talking about. Um, was in the world of nature a a um, a result of an earlier form of this illness, which required that he have one of his eyes removed. So it's pretty serious, right? Serious stuff. No, and no, no walk in the park. See, he had this his eye removed a few years ago. Jumped back into life, and then now a reoccurrence in a different part of his body. He just found out that the treatments they were giving him, it's a very rare form of this disease. Very few people have, so they don't have a lot of research on it. He just found out that the treatment they were giving him was not being effective. So he's going to be starting a trial treatment. Why am I sharing all of this with you? Not to make you morbid in any way. I'm sharing this because when I met this individual, I was really inspired by him. I have to say I was really inspired by him. Number one, he was not gripped by fear. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Number two, he told me something that I would never tell him, but it was very insightful for him to be able to say to me about himself. And that is that he said, I think that God sent me a sign a few years ago, but I didn't really pay attention to it. I just dealt with it and then dove right back into living the life the way I was living it. And now I'm getting another message from God, and this time I don't want to miss the message, which is really, really profound for someone to say when they're in a situation that is very potentially, it can be just be consume the person, because it can potentially be, a life and death situation. And he's actually making a major shift in his life, and he's actively working on making a major shift in his life, and a shift in who he is. That means that his nature is to operate one way. I know I'm being a little bit general and vague, but his nature is to operate one way, as we all have a nature to operate one way. And all of us need to find balance. And so we pivot as we go through life to balance ourselves to be healthy. And he's really working very hard at doing that, which is really inspiring. And he's also really, instead of actually he's not a religious person. He wasn't raised in a religious environment at all. So that's not easy for him at all. But it's not. I don't think the word religious is probably not the right word. But I should just say that God is not what he was raised with, and God is not what he's accustomed to. But he's actually listening to his soul as it speaks to him. through this challenging time, and he's actually turning more to his soul than he is to medicine. Now, I don't mean to say that he's not turning to medicine. He's turning to medicine very strongly. But I mean in his belief system. In his belief system, where he's putting his trust is in God, which is really just spectacular. It's spectacular and unbelievable to watch a person do that in such a crisis where someone can easily be overtaken by fear, and also someone who is not raised this way, and is very, very strong about this. Very, very inspiring, and especially today, because today is the 18th day of the month of Elul, which is 18, we know is Chai. And so we as Chabad Hasidim call this day Chai Elul, the 18th day, Chai Elul, the 18th day of Elul. Not just the 18th day of Elul, but Chai Elul. We give it the name Chai, which is life, because two very unbelievable things happened on this day. And that is that God sent two souls to this world on this day, which would be souls that bring a new level of life to the Jewish people. And I'll explain what that means in a moment. But who are these two people? One is the Baal Shem Tov, who was born today. And in 1698, the Baal Shem Tov was born. Remember 1698? The good old days. And then in 1745, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, was born. Both on this day, which is really fascinating. We know that nothing is by divine providence. Oh, just give me a moment. I'm sorry. Excuse me for one moment. Excuse me for one moment. Nachman.
Did anybody hear what year he said the Alter Rebbe was born?
1745 is what I'm remembering.
That's what I thought he said. I was trying to write this down, but
Okay, sorry about that. I may get interrupted again in a minute, but we'll see. Hey, I am. Just give me one more second. I'm sorry. Yes. Huh? Here. Okay. So the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were born on this day. And everything is by divine providence. There's a reason why a special neshama that God sends down to the world on a special day. And that's because Chai Elul is the day that God infuses life in a unique way. Because we know that this day is exactly 12 days from Rosh Hashanah. So we have day 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. There are 29 days in the month of Elul. So the last 12 days begin today. So if we do a countdown or a count up, however you want to do it, 1, 2, 3, today would be day 1. And we know that the month of Elul is a month of stockholding, of accountability, of reflection of how we were in the past year. So for the next 12 days, beginning with today, we reflect on a month of the past year so that we can review our entire year as we come to Rosh Hashanah. And in doing so, we attempt to tap deeper into ourselves to awaken a new level of life in our service of God in this world. What does that mean? And why the reason why the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were born on this day is because they brought a new level of life to Judaism. They brought a new level of life to the Jewish people. How does a person experience a new level of life? Life is our soul. That is what life is. That's the reason why our life is eternal, because the soul always goes on, always continues. It just moves into different realities. But our life in this world is not our bodily life, it is our soul life. That is life. The deeper we go into our soul, the more we infuse life into our experience of everything, into our service of God. So when a person taps deeper, a person is more inspired, a person is more energized, a person is more connected. That's the reason why when we want to inspire people with Judaism, watering it down doesn't actually work, because we're taking them away from the very vitality, the energy, which is really what is the whole attraction of Judaism, that we show people that there is something so much more energizing and invigorating that you can experience in your experience in this world than just the normal life that human beings live, which gets very dull, which is very aggravating, which is very frustrating, which is very shallow. There are numerous, endless numbers of issues with just living life as a human being. But when we live life with the energized by our soul, then we are infused. That's the reason why, as well, the Baal Shem Tov was brought to this world. Because while the nations prior to the Baal Shem Tov were able to thrive as Jews with the Judaism that they experienced, the Baal Shem Tov came and revealed to the common Jew aspects or dimensions of Judaism which were not exposed to the broader Jewish community. So he essentially took a very deep parts, and again, deeper means more life, deep parts of Judaism, which were generally taught in very advanced, sophisticated, if you will, high-level ways to select few people. And he brought down those teachings so that every Jew can benefit and be infused by the vitality and energy of this deeper dimension of Judaism. This deeper dimension is called Pnimius HaTorah, the deeper aspect of the Torah. It's deeper and it gives us more life. And the reason why Hashem sent his soul down to this world in 1698 is because it was the Jewish people were in a state of crisis after all of the pogroms that were going on in Europe. And many Jews didn't have the ability to learn and study Torah. They were simply trying to survive, make a living, and make sure they're not going to get killed the next day by some pogrom or by the Cossacks. So he came and infused an appreciation of Judaism in a way that was invigorating to every single Jew. And that's the reason why this aspect of Torah study is so fundamental. Because we live in a world which is very confusing today. We live in a world that's very, very confusing. We live in a world that is very, very shallow, that's very, very distracting. And unless we demonstrate to ourselves, and of course to others as well, but first to ourselves, the deeper energy of Judaism, it's really hard to grasp onto it. It's really hard to be dedicated to it. But when we do that, we have an entirely new life. We infuse new life in our life. And the Alter Rebbe, who considered the Baal Shem Tov to be his spiritual grandfather, because the Alter Rebbe was the disciple of the Baal Shem Tov's successor, known as the Maggid of Mizrich. So his teacher, he considered to be his spiritual father, and the Baal Shem Tov, his teacher's teacher, he considered to be his spiritual grandfather. He continued this through his teachings of the Tanya and Chabad philosophy, so that through our understanding, through our study, we can actually infuse emotion into our experience of Judaism, and it can be very enriching. There was a Jew that once came to the Rebbe and was complaining to the Rebbe that his children were not engaged in Judaism. he was an immigrant, I think from Europe, and his children were American kids. And his kids were not interested in Judaism the way he was. And he was complaining to the Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe, Es ist schwer zu sein ein Yid. In his complaining, he said it's difficult to be a Jew. So the Rebbe said, do you say that phrase often? He said, I do. So he says, well, how would you expect your children to be inspired towards Judaism if their father always says Judaism is difficult? So if we're not inspired, then the people around us cannot be inspired either. And the key to being inspired is to learning about the richness of Judaism, not just to learn the rituals and that this is what we do, which is important, very important, but it's not enough. We need to learn about who God is, who we are, the relationship that we have with God, that there's a dimension to reality which is far more real than we see, which is the dimension of faith, the dimension of trust, the dimension of soul. And then we begin to experience something that is far deeper than what the world can offer us. So during the next 12 days, beginning with today, we can work on looking at our past year, but also with having in mind the future year and asking ourselves what we can dedicate ourselves to so that we are on a constant path of infusing ourselves with a new life, a deeper level of life in our experience as a Jew. And that can be very transformative. And just like this individual who's in going through a state of crisis, you can say, he's in a state of crisis with his health, and he is determined, and he's a young man, and he has young kids, and he's determined to attach himself to real life, which of course will affect his physical life. So we should all be inspired by that. And as we approach the new year of Rosh Hashanah, we should look to do the same. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And yes, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in.
Rabbi, just a question. Maybe I misunderstood Rosie on Wednesday. Were we supposed to, on each of these days, like starting today with Tishrei, look back at Tishrei last year? I thought she said that we look back on what we did during each month, and that if we